meeting is being recorded.
Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Lynchburg. We're so glad you're here. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we work together for justice, compassion, and peace, we acknowledge with humility that our buildings stand on Monacan land. I'm Terry Bailiff. I'm the called minister of this congregation, and I share the ministry with all our members and friends. If you're with us for the first time, we're glad you chose to be here this morning to participate in this service. If you'd like to receive our monthly newsletter and Friday e-news updates, please fill out the virtual visitor card if you're online. And if you're in here, there's a yellow visitor card in the back of the seat in front of you. If you fill out one of those cards, if you could just, when the offering basket comes around, put that in the offering basket. Please take note of the announcements in the bulletin, and if you're on Zoom, you can find those in the Friday e-news. Today, our focus is different than a lot of our services because we're focusing on potential changes in our UU bylaws, which are things that we need to know about. Following the service today, we hope you'll take your ideas into social time, either in Drysdale or discussions on Zoom. In Drysdale, you'll find a display board over on the left side of the wall, and you can add your thoughts and suggestions about our principles and sources that you will write down during the service. If you have your the papers that were in your seat, if you look at the back, there are two cute Post-it notes that you'll get to write on during the service. Also, we're going to have a Thursday evening event, discussion at 7 p.m. The Zoom link is in your bulletin and is also in the Friday blast. This is an announcement from Molly. This is an invitation for you to join the Alliance tomorrow at 2 p.m. to watch West Side Story at the Academy Center for the Arts, released in 1961. It's part of their classic movie series. I feel like a classic reading that. Tickets are $8. A drink and popcorn are $2. If you want to know more, talk to Molly. Where's Pat? There's Pat. Becky or Rosemary? Rosemary's in the other room. And Becky's upstairs. Anyway, it should be really fun. Next Sunday, our name change task force will talk to us about the suggestions and opinions of our members and friends who replied to the survey. That's an announcement that it's not too late. You can still fill out the survey. Also, next Sunday is the last Sunday that I will be here before Barb and I go off to walk part of the Camino de Santiago. So I hope y'all can be with us next Sunday. Many thanks to Makana Morris, retired UU minister, former UUA staff member, and wise mentor to many of us, who spent hours researching and providing information for us on the topic we're going to address this morning. We're also grateful to the Reverend Cynthia Landrum. We're going to show some of her slides, and they are proving to be a great resource for UU congregations in sorting through our thoughts and feelings. So now, let's take a deep breath. And I invite us to release our worries about the world and our own lives as we enter into the service by taking some slow, calming breaths. Please join me in our chalice lighting words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of life. Our first hymn this morning was written specifically for the merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists in 1961, and really speaks to the dynamic, ever-evolving nature of life and our faith tradition. Let us rise in body of spirit. And I'd like to invite our young people forward to come chat with me for a couple of minutes. Hey, Jenny. So I think some people are hesitant. They're busy. Y'all are busy. You want to sit down?
Have a seat.
Come join me.
I'll be right here.
Goodness, everybody has such fun things on today. So I want to talk a little bit. You may have noticed this out when you're walking around or when you're outside. You know, some things change and some things stay the same. And sometimes it's hard to remember what's changed and what stays the same. So, what are some things that you think stay the same all the time? I can think of something.
What?
No matter what you do or what happens, your parents are going to love you. Right? Okay. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, so let's think about that. What else doesn't change? Huh? Love doesn't change. How about the sun coming up in the morning? Even if there are clouds in the way, the sun comes up, right? Because the earth is, huh?
What about the rain?
Well, the rain sometimes blocks the sun, but you're right. That needs to not change, because no matter where we are on earth, all living things need water to be nourished. So what's something that does change? You had something, Nora.
The virus. It changed from virus to no virus.
That's a little more sophisticated than I was going for, but you're right. The virus did change, does change. Yep. More shots going on. So what's something else that changes? What? Feelings change. You're right. Sometimes we feel that love, and sometimes, I'm telling you, sometimes people step on my last nerve, and then I have different feelings, right? And sometimes we feel angry, and sometimes we feel sad, and sometimes we feel like our feelings aren't okay, but all of the feelings that we have are okay. Sometimes we need help knowing how to express those in a way that's healthy for everybody, right? But we need to make sure that we let people know what we're feeling. So this is, you change as you're getting older. PJ, you're a lot taller since the last time I saw you. Oh my goodness. Okay, there's some other things that change, like your mind changes. Think about all the things that you've learned, like in your religious education class, you're learning things that you didn't think of when you were younger. Some other things are going to be changing, like Kaimana is an only child right now, and pretty soon she's going to be a sister, and then she knows all this stuff that the baby's not going to know. So she's going to help the baby learn things that the baby needs to know. So here at First UU, we change and stay the same also. Our big organization that goes around the world is called the UUA, and it's recommending some changes in how we talk about Unitarian Universalism. And that'll be a change for some of us, for all of us. And sometimes that feels uncomfortable, and sometimes we're excited about it. But what doesn't change is that we're a community, and we care for each other, and we support one another, and we want to be there for each other when we're in need. And that will never change.
Learning will never change.
Huh?
Learning.
Learning, that's right, because that's one of the things we're all committed to. No matter who you are, if you're the oldest person in this congregation, part of what's important is learning and growing in your heart, mind, and spirit. Yeah. So I'd like for y'all to think about that as you go to your classes. And
Yeah. So in our classes today, we are going to be continuing to learn about being vulnerable. And today we're going to be talking about what it means to hope and how frightening it can be to hope for something that you really, really want and not know if it's going to happen or not. So we're going to be learning about that. And we're also going to be talking about some of the changes that Reverend Terry was talking about things that might be happening in our big organization and how that will look different for us if those changes happen. And even just the process of talking about it means that we're changing because we're learning different things.
Can I do the child slider?
No, not this one, because I think you've been the child slider recently. And we have this very nice Article 2 coloring book that is good for kids and grown-ups. And it's really very neat. And it talks about the different values that may go into the new Article 2. And so we have some of these on the activity table in Drysdale Hall if you would like to pick one up.
And I think if we run out and some of the grown-ups need to color in the coloring book, we can get more.
We will be getting more, absolutely. So don't worry if you take the last one today. We can definitely get more of them, and they're very cool. All right, I'm going to invite Aaliyah and Penelope to be our child sliders this morning.
Sometimes I forget how sophisticated Unitarian Universalist kids are in our congregations. I have for years said my high-risk behavior every week is the time for all ages. I have to think quickly, and aren't they wonderful? Oh my gosh, yesterday at my granddaughter's 4th birthday party, there were a bunch of UU families from the Greensboro congregation, and they were just as creative. Goodness. I'd like to share this reading, The Heart of Our Faith by Monica Jacobson Tennyson. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that calls you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Today we take an offering of our gifts for the work of this community. The gifts of our time and energy, good wishes, and financial gifts help create the community that we are. And so I invite you to give generously for the work of this community, and your gifts will be gratefully received. Thank you. It is the tradition of our community to share together the joys and the concerns. Spirit of life and love, we give thanks for the spirit of this community, for these beloved souls who help nurture us, help us learn and grow, help raise the next generation. We hold up today all those who experience illness in mind, body, and spirit, that they may find healing and wholeness. We give thanks for those people who reach out, who end up being the Good Samaritans, who do the little things in life also, smiles and the smallest acts of kindness that can make such a difference to every person. We hold up also those who are suffering from lack of housing, food, health care, community. May we, because of our commitment to justice and peace, find the ways that we as individuals in a congregation can make a difference to help transform our community and the world. This we ask in the name of all that is sacred. Amen. Our opening hymn often reminds me of the waters, tranquil streams flowing. But it reminds me of the waters that were part of my early years. Most of you know I grew up in flatland that was quite near the Mississippi River. The highest point anywhere in the area is the levee of the river. It was built to save lives when the Mississippi flooded, though the Corps of Engineers has tried for years, decades, to manage the flow of the river. It is alive. Over time, the riverbed shifts and changes as immense amounts of water shape and reshape the land, despite human effort to control its meandering. It is always changing and it's always constant. We live near the banks of a much smaller river, and Lynchburg itself came into existence because of the human need to journey and explore as well as to adapt and evolve. We humans have always sought to plan exploits based on boundaries or structures that we create to guide our lives and ambitions. In that spirit, it's time for our Unitarian Universalist Association to examine the structure of our faith, our beliefs, our values. This examination is meant to help you better prepare for and articulate the future we hope to create as Unitarian Universalists. This examination and resulting proposed changes to our bylaws is not a new practice, but I feel like I need to explain some of what happens. It's an ongoing affirmation that we are people on the move, changing and evolving as new inspiration and wisdom emerges. I was reminded of the dynamic nature of our faith last week when I found a quote by the Universalist Church of America theologian Lewis Fisher, and he wrote it in 1922, but I think it still holds wisdom for us. He wrote, "Universalists are often asked to tell where they stand. The only true answer to give to this question is that we don't stand at all. We move. We do not stand still, nor do we defend any immovable positions. We grow, as all living things forever must do. The main questions with Universalists are not where we stand, but which way we are moving. Our main interest is to perceive what is true progress and to keep our movements in line with that and not allow ourselves to move around and around in circles like a squirrel in its cage. Old worn phrases are always losing their old meanings and must be forever finding new ways in the light of new experiences." Though an examination of the UU bylaws guiding us began shortly before COVID hit, so much has changed in our lives and society that I think this is the perfect time to examine how we Unitarian Universalists want to shape our future. It's time for the UUA, as representatives of our faith, to review the bylaws that guide our institution legally and philosophically, especially Article 2. This bylaws article includes our principles and sources, and changes could affect or completely eliminate the wording that is core to how we articulate our beliefs. And I have to admit that I feel personally some resistance in myself about changing them, though I will do the best I can to be unbiased in this presentation. I came to Unitarian Universalism as an adult with the principles and sources as my inspiration and guiding light. I hold them close and share them with those who wish to understand more about Unitarian Universalism. They are statements that are my elevator speech and my grounding in Unitarian Universalism. And yet, as I seek to learn how and why changes are being suggested, many of the suggestions do make sense. It is time for us to focus on the values that lead us to live our faith within our community and the larger world. And I'm still processing what I think. This morning and also Thursday evening are initial opportunities for us to begin to consider these proposed changes and whether we believe they should be part of the UU bylaws and potentially replace the principles and sources. In my own considerations of the changes, I began to think about what brings us to this congregation in the first place. Some of us in this room are longtime UUs. Some of us were born Unitarian Universalists. Others of us are real newbies. Each of us came here for varied reasons, but I think many of us might say we are here in large part because we need a community to help us navigate our way through the world. The beliefs of our faith and community guide our way of living. And most of us realize we don't want to be alone as we explore our inner and outer worlds. We need each other. So why does examining our values and beliefs matter? We want to create and maintain a culture of well-being in our congregation. We want to feel safe in this congregation. We have both chosen and helped create. David, do you have that first slide? Okay, we'll go on. We want to share values with those sitting around us. We want to be able to trust our covenant mission and vision of this congregation. We need to trust that they're viable statements. From that foundation, we need not just to have words, we need to live out those words and beliefs. And how do we manifest our well-being? Through our programs, through Sunday services, fellowship and social events, education for all ages, and our justice work. And why do we do this? Because our faith calls us to participate in the transformation of the world, to build the beloved community. As liberal religious people who value truth, knowledge, scientific and scholarly research, as well as the call of the heart to act in just ways, Unitarian Universalists have long valued a living, evolving faith that is open to a variety of sources of wisdom and understanding. When Universalists and Unitarians, when we first merged, both faiths brought their own unique statements of their values and perspectives to the merger. These statements have evolved through shared discussion and, when needed, the votes of both threads of our faith. At the merger, the UUA adopted a list of 6 principles of a free faith. This statement laid the foundation for our mutual understanding. David, can we see that statement? Thank you. Okay, I don't know how well you can read this, but some of the wording is really powerful. The principles of a free faith: to strengthen one another in free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship, to cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. And it goes on to explain our principles. I'm not going to read all of them, but as I was rereading them after a long time, I realized, oh, some of that wording is what we protested over in seminary. Being an early woman seminary student, but also the wording is very powerful, and for its time it was important. But in 1985 and 86, after a denominational process similar to the one we're entering now, Unitarian Universalists voted in favor of our current statement of principles and purposes. And let's look at that. Okay, this is the one we're familiar with, although our seventh principle was added, was not part of the original. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Through each of those important statements, ending with respect for the interdependent web of life of which we are all a part. This is a strong statement of what we believe, and it's a statement that many people seeking to learn about Unitarian Universalism can understand. And since 85 and 86, there have been some small changes that have been made. Some people wanted to make big changes that were defeated. These engagements among individuals and congregations and the leadership of the UUA are part of our commitment to the democratic process so that our faith can remain relevant in changing times. We affirm a living and transformative faith. So today we're looking at the 2023 recommendations for changes. Now, I have been slow on the uptake, but so have a lot of congregations been. This self-examination started in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic, so it got a slow start. But it's up to us and UUs all around the world whether we want to accept the changes, keep our principles and sources, or eventually create an adaptation of the proposed changes. And there's been a lot of work going on, an extensive study process. Since spring of 2021, the study commission has hosted discussions, small group meetings, focus meetings, interviews, surveys, all to better understand the values and sources of inspiration shared among Unitarian Universalists. The commission members have gathered feedback and ideas and then took the suggestions to for proposed changes to the UUA Board of Trustees, and that's in your order of service. Today, we're just going to give an overview of some of the proposed changes with a focus on the values and inspirations that are part of the recommendations. For those of you on Zoom, the proposal is part of the Friday Blast. If for some reason you did not receive that, please let Makana or me know and we will get you a copy. So this is our introduction to the proposed wording, but it's not our last opportunity. I'm hoping during social time, you can pick up a flyer about next steps and join us on Thursday night for the Zoom discussion. If you don't have the link, please email Makana or myself. So the UUA is inviting individuals as well as congregations to submit proposed amendments during April and May. And I think that there are a lot of amendments that are going to be suggested. We in our congregation will have the opportunity to talk to our delegates to the UU General Assembly, where they will be able to vote on the proposed changes or not. And so we can let Courtney and other people who were attending GA know what our wishes are. Okay, deep breath. This is a lot of detailed information. And, you know, even though most of us roll our eyes talking about bylaw changes, we all need to understand the Article 2 process and know that the commission members want and need our thoughts and feelings about this shift in how we articulate who we are as Unitarian Universalists and what we believe. The changes propose that we move away from declarations of our principles to affirmations of our core values. This proposal is a huge shift for many of us who came into Unitarian Universalism because for some of us, the principles and sources were a lifeline as we left another faith tradition. For those of you who wish to explore in more detail, there's a handout in Drysdale Hall that delineates next steps and how our voices can be heard, including a link to more deeply explore the entire report. Though there have been many meetings today across the country, today's our first look at this as a congregation and our first ability to begin to discuss this. So this is a lot of wording to absorb, but I want you to just let yourself be aware of what you initially like about the changes and what doesn't resonate with you. I think we all need to think about that. So many thanks to Reverend Cynthia Landrum for her slide presentation that she's made available to congregations, and we're going to see a few of the slides. So now, suggested changes. Thank you. So these are the values in sort of a core picture of what the proposed changes include. Love at the center of our faith and our values of interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. So it begins with, as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these are our shared values. Interdependence. So I'm going to go from the right to the left. The wording about interdependence, we honor the sacred interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. What we have now is the principle number 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Our next value is equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. This would replace the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. The statement related to that is religious liberalism depends on the principle that revelation is continuous. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. This replaces Principle 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. And that is followed by wording for justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. And as I read before, we covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. And that value relates to the proposed 8th principle. So if these changes are adapted, then the proposed 8th principle will not go forward because it would be subsumed in this. So I also want us to look at how this deals with our sources. So we've got our sources, and I'm not going to read them all. They are in the front of the hymnal, about page 8, with the principles and current sources. And they're changing them from sources to inspirations. As Unitarian Universalists, we use and are inspired by sacred and secular understandings that help us to live into our values. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which they were created and are currently practiced. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. Grateful for the religious ancestries we inherit and the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. That's a lot, isn't it, to even wrap our brains around. That's why we're starting this morning, but we're going to continue talking about this. One of the change that I find particularly concerning to me, and I'm not going to be neutral on this, is doing away with the sources, because I think many of us Unitarian Universalists are challenged to be, completely inclusive of religious and spiritual diversity. We can be fundamentalist in our own way. And for me, having the sources written down in print is important to me. Like, we can talk about Buddha all day, but some of us have issues with talking about Jesus or quoting the Bible. There might be some other people who have other issues with different sources. I think we all need that wording to remind us that we are still growing in understanding and compassion toward people of other beliefs. But that is my opinion, and you will have your own. The proposed edits to Article 2 represent the potential for huge changes, and almost certainly there are going to be a lot of edits. As we look at the proposal, you may want to look for yourself to see some of the wording that's special to you about the principles and how it fits in to the proposed changes. So let yourself be aware of the proposed changes. What do you like about it? If there's something you saw that you really like, write it on that little pink heart on the back of your handout. If there are things that you think need to be changed or added, write it on the square Post-it note on the back of your handout. So let's just take a minute for you to think about your own feelings about this. I know I've thrown a lot at you right now. And then just jot them down on those Post-it notes if you want to. During social time, you can put them on the display board in Drysdale Hall. Friends on Zoom may email them to Makana or to me. We want to hear from you all. So let's just take a minute for people to be able to write. As people are writing, do a couple of people have thoughts about what like jumped out at you in this rushed initial overview? Yes, Molly.
My first thought is that I dislike getting rid of the numbers.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Just one
I
second.
dislike getting rid of the numbers.
The numbers on the principal?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, Molly, I'm going to share my microphone with you.
I wondered where it was.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, under purposes, the purposes of the UUA is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world and liberating love. The UUA is an association of churches. So what do they mean by members? The members of the churches or the church itself?
Good catch, Molly. Write that down on your piece of paper. Eddie.
I just want to make people aware that General Assembly is in Pittsburgh. Right now, I'm aware of one person going. That will be Courtney, and she's going as a religious professional. She can also be a delegate. This congregation has 3 delegates. So we need at least 2 more of you who want to go. That does not include our ministers. They vote their conscience.
And also you can zoom in to do this if you can't drive to Pittsburgh. Yes. So I know that, you're probably still writing things down or thinking about this some more. We can talk about it in Drysdale Hall. We appreciate you adding your comments to the display board. We know that in our community and in Unitarian Universalist, each of us has a voice. This is a time when our voices will help guide the future of our faith. In the coming weeks and months, let us listen to one another, let us reflect, let us share what is most important to us about how we articulate our principles, our values, our faith. And may our words be put into action by the ways in which we live with hope, with integrity, with joy, and with simplicity. I invite us to rise in body or spirit as we share our closing hymn, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple." Be seated. I'm sorry, I love that hymn, and it was a little tongue in cheek as we're talking about all these complex bylaws. How do we come back to the simplicity of life? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing blessing is by Emily Richards. May you leave this time together changed. May the promises you have made to yourselves about who you want to be feel closer to the reality of who you are right now. May you share that feeling of transformation wherever you go. May it spread into every word, deed, thought, and interaction until we are all changed, transformed, and transforming together, becoming our better selves. Go in peace and go in love. Blessed be.
So David, I don't know if you want to stop recording.
Yes, I do. Thank you for
Yep.